Hi, gang. It's John Suzuki with the Finding Better podcast. Coming up is the election. And one way or the other, half the country is going to be really happy, half the country is going to be really upset. And it's just one of those divisive times that we're dealing with right now. And a lot of times you might be in a situation where you wonder if there's anything you can do. Well, I've got Sam Daley-Harris joining me. And regardless of whether your side wins or loses, he's going to talk about how we can get involved, how you can get involved in the political process. It's really cool, especially if there's things that you would like to do and make a difference. Please join us and share. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And I'm just going to net this out. The reason why we do this podcast is to share experiences and wisdom of things that we've done where we've been there and done that. Because sometimes the best way to success is to copy it, right? And we have a very, very interesting episode that we're going to share with you today. We're going to talk about politics. Now, don't run away. Don't run away. This is all about finding better, right? And if you're like me, we live in a crazy world right now. Our country has never been more divided, at least in my lifetime that I can recall. And the conversations are just so divisive, and unfortunately, it's going to continue. And I also have a belief that if you want to change something, it starts with us. It starts with us. And so my guest today is Sam Daley-Harris, and we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about you and political advocacy, because there's just because of everything that's going on. The idea that we wanted to talk with you about today was for you to get involved, because so many people feel hopeless in the process, right? There's so much other stuff going on. Well, you know what? You can do something about it. You can do something about it. You can participate. And we're here to talk to you about how you can do that and how you can build those advocacy skills. Almost hopefully we're going to talk about transformation, right, Sam?
That's right.
Yeah. So Sam, welcome to Finding Better. Thank you for being here. We want to make this world better despite politics, and we want you to
Right.
tell us how. How's that for an introduction?
That's great. And if I could actually start with how I got here,
Sure.
and
Absolutely.
it's called The Story of Self. It was developed by Marshall Gans, a Harvard professor, and
Okay.
basically asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this moment or got you to this commitment.
Yeah.
And I'm
Interesting.
going to tell my story of self, but when I do, I always urge people to think about their story. What's happened in your life and what ha- decisions did you make that got you to this podcast, for example?
Yeah.
And so let
Wonderful.
me tell mine.
Okay.
And it goes like this. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years, and I taught high school music. And 44 years ago, I founded the anti-poverty lobby. Results, and a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection there? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation
Mm.
in 1964, and the assassination of US Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What
Sure.
am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I mean,
Sure.
I'm thinking it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and realize right away there's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature,
Yep.
people.
Yep.
We
Yep.
just
Yep. Yep.
never get around to doing the things that can be done.
Or worse, people prevent them from happening.
Okay, yeah. But there was one human nature I had some control over, my own,
Sure.
and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students on ending world hunger, classroom by classroom. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger and others calling for the political will
Right.
and hunger.
Right.
So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote him. I don't want to know if you met him, just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, the number that could answer correctly, 200, fewer than 3%. Over
Mm-hmm.
6,800, over 97% could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results started out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. And if I could just share this one quote that kind of kept me going in the early
Okay.
days, talking 80, 81, 82, and on. Buckminster Fuller, the futurist and inventor, said, the things to do are the things that need doing, that you see need to be done, and that no one else seems to see needs to be done. Well, in 1980, hardly anyone saw that there was some need for political will to end hunger. I saw that, and that really sustained me to, like, you could say, go against the grain or go in a different direction and keep going.
So, first of all, from your story, I'm actually impressed that 3% of high school students knew who their congressperson was. Um, I, I,
Well,
I,
those 3% are now in their 60s. Go
I
ahead.
would, I would, I would imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if a similar low percentage of people know their congressman today or
Yes.
congressperson
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And uh, so that's how you started. You started the poverty lobby, and and did you end world hunger?
Well, okay. Great question. So let me just say, we started lobbying in 1984 on
Hmm.
child survival. And UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, was reporting that 40,000 children around the world were dying every day from preventable things. Things like measles coupled with malnutrition or
Right,
dehydration brought on by diarrhea and drinking
right.
dirty water, et cetera. And results volunteers lobbied every year, 84, 85, 96, 2002, 2000, every year. And the global child death rate has fallen by 66% from 40,000 a day in the early 80s to 13,800
That's amazing.
in
That's amazing.
2021. Imagine being part of an organization that played a leadership role in a 66%. See, we always hear the tragedy. We never hear the progress.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
And the head of UNICEF, I'll give you one example. The head of UNICEF back in 86, the volunteers generated 90 editorials on tripling the Child Survival Fund, not letters to the editor, but where they met with the editorial writer and they wrote an editorial in the paper, 90, from the New York Times to the LA Times, from the Miami Herald to well, probably would have been the Seattle Post Intelligencer at the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
But anyway, uh, and the head of UNICEF, we would send 4 editorials, 5 editorials to key decision makers once we got a new batch in. He took the cover letter from the last batch, and the head of UNICEF wrote, I thank you in my mind at least weekly for what you and your colleagues are accomplishing, but I thought I should thank you at least once this year in writing. And this was 1986. I have another quote in the book from 27 years later where
Yeah, so
another
let's
had,
let's talk a little bit about that experience and how it applies today, because you had mentioned that we always hear about the bad news, we never hear about the progress,
right,
and to me, one of the things that I am constantly advocating is don't be a victim, despite how the powers that be want you to feel like a victim. The fact of the matter is, victimhood starts with blame, blaming somebody else for your circumstances. What I do, and with my book, American Grit, it's all about taking charge of your life, right? Taking
yeah,
responsibility.
yeah, yeah,
And regardless of where, in my book's case, these folks were in American concentration camps. They were Japanese Americans during World War II. And there were people who refused to blame anybody for their circumstances. They had every reason to, and lots of people
yeah,
did, but these guys didn't. And they went on to volunteer out of the camps to fight for the United States Army. Many of them died, but they proved their loyalty, and they refused to be victims, and they changed the world.
yeah,
They changed the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
And so, I think about what you said about not reporting progress, right? It's really important. It's really important to give people hope,
Mhm.
right? To give
Yeah,
people hope that these problems can be solved. Now, in today's world, just something that is happening right now are these hurricanes,
yeah,
right? And the Hurricane Helene decimated parts of the Southeast
yeah,
and parts of Western North Carolina. And the thing that really strikes me about in terms of parallel of what you're talking about is that there are hundreds, thousands of people who've taken it upon themselves. Forget the government, whether the government's helping or not, to help, to
yeah,
get involved, to
yeah,
make things right, to save
yeah,
lives, to bring in water, electricity, to bring in all those different kinds of things, and they're getting involved, and they are, whether they have a choice or not. Many people do have a choice, and they're making things better. So when one of the things, as we talk about politics, one of the things that you often say is, yes, we can reclaim our democracy, right? And
right.
of course, regardless of your political leaning, the left is saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and an existential threat. And the Republicans are saying the Democrats are an existential threat to democracy. So the things that we're talking about are irrespective of whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, left or right,
No.
or somewhere in between, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I want to link in what you've just been saying with something you said earlier,
Okay.
which is the despair or the hopelessness that people feel. And I want to share, I was on an NPR interview show 1A, and it was in January. And the host, this was question number two. I pretty much have it by heart, but I want to read this question. And I think he was speaking for the public when he asked me this question. And then I want to give his answers. And I think it ties into what you've been asking. Question number two: the passive nature to our politics now, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. It's much more of an effort for me. I don't participate the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What is a way out of that? That was question number two. And what I said was, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, we aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew, which I think relates to your Southeast and the hurricane relief. We're the crew. Well, are we? And if we are crew, how does crew operate in our democracy? And the second thing I said was futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Well, yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything. Why would I if anything I do make nothing I do makes a difference? And so I think there are a number of messages in those quotes and that question that was asked of me on national radio um, about the discouragement and about the kind of, you know, what was your word? Don't be a
Victim.
victim. Yeah. Well, crew is not victim kind
No,
of
that's
thing.
right. And that is really interesting. We're not passengers on this rock. We are the crew.
Yeah.
And you know, the same thing holds true with our country. You know,
Right.
we are not people to be governed. We are the people who
Yeah.
are supposed to have the power, right?
Yeah. Well,
And yeah,
the entire quote is we aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew.
right.
We aren't residents on this planet. We're citizens. The difference in both cases is responsibility.
That's right.
I
That's
don't,
right.
I find it very exciting.
No, and I love it. I love it because it goes back to what I was just saying about being a champion of your life. You know, we talked a little bit about you had mentioned about decisions, looking back on the decisions that you made that have led you to this point. I have said time and time and time again, despite how some people may disagree with me, that the product of your life today, Sam, is your life today is the product of the decisions and the choices that you've made in your life.
Yeah.
They are, right?
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
say, "Well, John, I can't decide who my parents are," right? Well, then I say, "Okay, so do you agree with this statement? Your life in the future is going to be the product of the decisions and the choices that you make today." And of course, everybody says yes, yes, right? So, so the idea is for me and this podcast, the entire reason for this podcast is to empower people, is to share with people things that have worked, things that have don't that didn't work in all of our lives, right? That we want to share to so that folks can apply some of those lessons and that wisdom to their
Yeah.
own lives.
Yeah.
Now, as we talk as we go back to the political part of it, right? Um, we talked about hopelessness. There are some people that feel that there's just nothing I can do.
Yeah.
There is a growing number of people who feel like there's a cabal or some sort of a broader power base of people or entities that are controlling things and who are very powerful. Whatever the reason, right? I'm just one person. What difference can I make?
Yeah.
What do you say to them? What do you say to them who say, you know what, things are messed up. I wish there was something I could do
Yeah.
about it.
Well,
What do
if
you
I
say
could,
to them?
yeah, let me just say that the main message of the book Reclaiming Our Democracy is a thing called transformational advocacy.
Cool.
Now, we all know transactional advocacy, sign the petition, transaction complete.
Right.
With
Right.
transformational advocacy, we're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things as advocates that we never thought we could do, like meet with a member of Congress and bring them on board to our issue or write a letter to the editor on something we care about it, have it published in the paper. And when we do those things that we thought we couldn't do, we see ourselves differently. We see ourselves in a new light. A transformation has taken place from I can't make a difference to I can. And the trick, and I'm going to close with this piece of it, is to find an organization that delivers transformational advocacy. I'm going to talk about three quick ingredients. One is recruitment and community building. Do they bring new people in, not just to build an e-blast list, but form them into local chapters so people aren't working alone? And do they build community? A monthly webinar with guest speakers and Q&A and
So
inspiration.
you're what you're talking about here is selecting an organization to participate in, right?
Yes,
So what you're talking about is that as you are looking for this organization for you who that advocates for the things that you believe in, and
yep,
there are advocacy groups for everything, right? So what you're saying is that what you're talking about are how you decide the questions that you
yes,
ask in
yes,
deciding who you're going to invest your time and energy with.
yes. But I'm going to go back now with some
Okay.
bad news. The Congressional Management Foundation did a survey. They asked grassroots advocacy professionals, staff, what their primary tactic was. And 79% of these grassroots advocacy staff said an email form letter was their 79%. Give me your name and your zip code and we'll send the letter for you. 79% said an email form letter was their primary tactic, but only 3% of congressional staff said an email form letter made a lot of difference in their office's decision. 94% said an in-person issue visit from constituents. In-person issue visit from constituents made some or a lot of difference. 94%. So a lot of what we're being fed is not that effective. So I'm saying find an organization that actually feeds you what's more effective. And that's an organization that's committed to recruitment and community building, bringing new people in, forming them into local chapters, and building community. Um, Again, maybe a monthly webinar with guest speakers, Q&A, inspiration. Two, training. How do you get the meeting with the elected? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Two, training. Three, breakthroughs. The organization encourages breakthroughs, encourages you to do things that you never thought you could do. And in the book, there's a drawing, there's a small circle labeled your comfort zone. And to the right is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you want to find an
That makes
organization that
sense.
doesn't kick you out, but encourages you out of your comfort zone, doing things you didn't think you could do. That's an organization that works to deliver transformational advocacy.
Okay, so we've just discussed the what. Now I want to discuss the how,
Okay.
right? How do you find, I mean,
Well,
just by definition of the form letter thing that you talked about, I mean, 3 out of 4 are not what you want
yes, yes,
based on what you just said.
yes,
And funneling down the 2 or 3 other things that you talked about, it might be only 10% of the organizations out there
yes, yes.
are
Well,
doing what
no,
you're
no,
suggesting. So how do you
no.
how do you
Well, here's the thing.
find
In
that?
the program notes, we're going to share um, basically a form letter where you can tell me, I want to find one of those groups, help me, and I can send you contact information and more about some of these groups. One is the group I founded 44 years ago, the Anti-Poverty Lobby Results, and then there's several others. Maybe I could tell you a story of
So
one.
just before you go there, because I want to talk about your anti-poverty group.
Yeah,
Okay. We've got a problem with poverty in this country, right? And y- um, and so is your group focused on poverty worldwide, or does worldwide include the United States?
both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
Let me tell you a quick story about in the United States. The Results has a monthly webinar, and it's on a Saturday.
Hmm.
And there was one Saturday where the US, it was during COVID, where the US Congress passed a child tax credit that provided something like $600 a month to per child to families, and child poverty declined by nearly 50% in this country as a result of that child tax credit implemented during COVID. Well, it was passed in the Senate on a Saturday, and one of the senators walked off the Senate floor and onto the Results Monthly webinar and said, "This is probably my most important day in the US Congress. And this child tax credit, we got to start now working to make it permanent." Well, it expired and it's not permanent, but in the last several months, the US House of Representatives, overwhelmingly, Republicans and Democrats voted to essentially make the child tax credit permanent. But then it didn't succeed in the Senate. It didn't have the votes that it needed.
Why
And
not?
so well, because there isn't enough demand, because there aren't enough citizens speaking out, because
No, well,
everyone's,
okay. So beyond that, why did the Senate? What was the reasoning behind the Senate voting it down?
well, it might have been, we don't want to give a victory during election year. I mean, bluntly, it could have been partially that. Um, but it's doesn't make sense, actually. And it's something. It's like here over here. There's low-hanging fruit called a 50% reduction in global domestic poverty, child poverty. We need to pick it. But we need to pick it by picking up the phone and getting a meeting with our member of Congress and talking to them about it and how important it is, and getting letters and editorials. And then we need the training to do those things. We
How?
need the
Yeah.
partnership to do those things. We can't do them alone.
Okay, so if a person is out there and for instance, I'm gonna be going to Washington, D.C. in 3 weeks. Um, can I pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to meet with my congressman?
Well, you can, and it might be that you end up meeting, hopefully, with a key aide, or it might be that you meet with the congressperson themselves. But what you want to do before you get there is get some coaching. I mean, I think you're in the Puget Sound area. I could connect you with folks who could train you up, and
Interesting.
get you, because you don't want to go in and then go, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." No, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to be informed, and sometimes you inform them. Yeah, yeah. I got more
Interesting.
stories to tell, but let's see where you want to take it.
Yeah, no, that it's the impression, one of the impressions that I have is communicating with our elected officials shouldn't be so hard. And I get it. I get it that there's a lot of people out there that want to talk to them.
Yep.
But um uh I don't even know a question. What
A
what what
member
what
of
question am I
Congress
supposed to ask
has
right now?
750,000 constituents. Your
Who?
U.S. representative has 750,000 approximately
Hmm.
constituents. Now, frankly, most of those are asleep, but still, even 1% of 750,000 is a lot of people, kind
Right.
of thing. So, there is some competition and others that want to meet with a member of Congress, but if you're
Yeah.
persistent, you're in there, kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really happy doing this episode because, I mean, the election is coming up, and but you know what? Life goes on after the election.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's going to be half the country that is happy with the results and half the country that's not happy with the results.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that both happy and unhappy people need to continue to
Yeah.
participate
Yeah.
in in the
Well, yeah, let,
process.
let me just a couple of stats. When Donald Trump was elected, 100 million Americans didn't vote. Forget participating between elections, which we ought to do. when Joe Biden was elected in 2020, it was the largest vote turnout in 120 years, and 80 million didn't vote. In 2022, the midterm elections, it was the second highest youth turnout in a midterm election, and 23% of youth voted. 23%. And that was the second highest youth turnout in a midterm
Right.
election. So we don't have a phenomenal track record
But
in
it's trending up.
participating. Yeah,
It's
okay.
trending
But
up, right?
and along with trending up, I want to urge our viewers and listeners to trend. The elections are critical, and so is the time between elections when key decisions are made.
Right. Right. And issues are brought forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so and so I tell people all the time, who say they didn't vote. And I understand my vote doesn't count. What vote? Well, if you don't vote, you don't have anything to complain about. And that is that's the one thing we have. That's the power that we have as the people. And if
Yeah,
you decide to let that go, um, brother, you got nothing to complain about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so how do people learn? We discussed the problem. We've discussed a little bit about what people can do. Um, and we're going to have in the program notes your
Sign up
links to
form,
you,
basically.
how,
Yeah.
how to sign up for you. And when they do that, they'll be able to get ideas, get coaching, uh, get access to more resources. Am I putting
No,
words in your
no,
mouth, or is
no,
that
that's right.
about
That's
right?
completely right. Let me tell another quick story just to bounce it out on the results thing. In 2019, President Trump called for a 29% cut. This is now global to the global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And it was about to be a 3-year replenishment for the global fund, and other countries would follow the US lead. Well, most people didn't know there was a call for a cut. And if they did, most people would throw up their hands. What can you do? You can't fight City Hall. The people I know roll up their sleeves and got to work. And they got hundreds of Republicans and Democrats to co-sponsor resolutions in the House and Senate in support of the Global Fund, and to sign letters in support to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the top appropriators in the House and Senate. And when I do my talk, I have this great slide of a results volunteer from Dallas, Texas, holding Senator Ted Cruz's hands with two hands. And she said, I learned in results I don't let go until I've finished my laser talk on the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Well, in the end, two House Republicans and two House Democrats stood on a stage in Lyon, France, and announced that the Congress would provide a 16% increase instead of a 29% cut, which President Trump signed into law, basically. And by 2022, the Global Fund and its partners had saved 59 million lives between 2002 and 2022, the first 20 years of the Global Fund. We never hear that there's something saving 59 million lives, in this case from AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And we certainly never hear that citizens had anything to do with it, kind of thing.
Right,
And
right.
again, it's that example of people all across the country getting trained, write
Wonderful,
letters to the
wonderful,
editors, send it to their member of Congress, call the aide to make sure they saw it, meeting face to face, and working for change, basically.
wonderful, wonderful. So folks, you heard it straight from Sam. You can make a difference. We can all make a difference. We the people.
Yeah.
and, and we gotta get back, not get back to that, but we have to solidify that. Because there's been so much energy and
Yeah.
so much concern on the side of um, our republic being threatened.
Yeah. And if I could just add, we can make a difference and not a head bashing
Right,
difference.
right.
And I want to share this one
Well,
piece.
before you go there,
Yeah.
I just want to say, and that's what I appreciate. That's what I appreciate. It's not what you're talking about is not head bashing. It's not this visceral hate of you can't get crap done unless you work together. It's okay to agree to
Yeah.
disagree. It's okay to have different
Yeah.
viewpoints, but you
Yeah.
work through them.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's working together. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I care about this country. I care about our people. I do care
Yeah.
about the world.
Yeah.
And from the standpoint of this country being unified and this country being strong, from there we can help the world. But if we're not a strong country, it's it gets pretty tough. I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
Or Sam, I just
No,
had to say that.
absolutely. So following up on that, when I'm coaching a group that's meeting with a member of Congress who opposes their bill, I have them ask three questions. Question one, we know you don't support this bill. What would it take to change your mind? Now
Hmm.
you're listening for assignments. Question one, what would it take to change your mind? Two,
Right?
could you say more about that?
Okay.
Three, why do you think that is? So it's a deep listening exercise. And essentially, your goal is not to get them to support the bill, which you would like. Your goal is to build a relationship so that they want to see
Got
you
it.
again, that they
Got it.
want to call you back, that you want
Interesting.
to find the places you can work together. And I had a friend who was working to create a climate solutions caucus in the House, a Republican and a Democrat. He lived in Pennsylvania. He had some resources. He kept flying to South Florida, where there was sea level rise and Republicans and Democrats. And he meets a member of Congress. He says, what would it take to change your mind? And the member says, well, if you could get the chambers of commerce on board. And he did. Miami, he came back with letters from the president, Miami, Miami Beach, Coral Gables, South Miami, North Miami. He comes back with the letters, and the congressman says, well, if you could get the mayors on board. And he did. He came back with Miami's mayor, Miami Beach, Coral Gables, South Miami, and it was just that process of listening for assignments and then producing. And the climate solution
You know,
caucus go,
it just has to do with civility,
yeah,
right? It has to do with respecting one another. And it goes
yeah,
back to what we were just talking about. We're not enemies. You know, we're
yeah,
we're 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 fellow citizens,
yeah,
right? And I love what you just said of it's not about changing their mind because that's not going to happen in one meeting. It's about starting a relationship
yeah,
and understanding.
yeah,
And again, it's that coming together. I can imagine people going into a politician's office and saying, "Why aren't you somebody?" Right? And then just
and they get that. Go ahead.
right, and they get that all the time, right? Um, you know, I've always said during my career that there's one thing about people that has been universally true that I have experienced, and that is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them, about the
Yep,
issue.
yep,
And it's about communication. It's about keeping those communication lines open and building those relationships and that understanding. You,
yeah,
you can you can be diametrically opposed to something and still be
yeah,
friends,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
it doesn't seem like that's the case these days,
yeah, yeah.
and
And
less and
there
less,
needs
right?
to be more of that. And
Yeah.
one of the things I train on is called the champion scale, moving my member of Congress who's opposed up to being neutral and neutral up to being a supporter. Don't stop there. Supporters to being an advocate, a leader, and a champion. And a lot of folks that are even involved say, well, mine's a Neanderthal. There's no reason to meet. No, no. Move them to neutral. And then Oh, they'll
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
my member,
exactly.
my member's already a supporter. There's no reason to meet with them. No, no,
He's
no.
a jerk.
Move
Yeah.
up to being an advocate. And one of the things I recommend is if you go to a member of Congress's website, they usually have all their news releases, things that they're proud of. Find something that they are proud of that you actually like and write a letter to the editor thanking them for their leadership on that and hoping they can bring the same kind of leadership to the issue you're concerned about. And it's just another way of finding and sharing appreciation and hopefully opening a door to your own concerns.
Reminds me of Thumper's mama on Bambi.
Okay.
If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And find something nice to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sam, do
Yeah.
you have a website? How do people learn? Where do people can
Well,
people go to
I
learn
think
more?
going to reclaimingourdemocracy.com, you can also get to the book and you can also get to the sign up sheet and ways you can learn more, find out how to get engaged if you've been
Okay.
inspired by anything we've said.
Okay. Wonderful. Um, uh, that's great. That's great. Folks, if um it's our time. It's our time. You know what? It's just we need to come back together. And for those of you who have participated and have listened to my podcast, you know, like I said, a big reason why I started this is because our political leaders are not bringing us together. And so it's folks like all of us. It all starts with us. We've got to do it.
Yeah.
And my whole mission in life is to do what I can to make this world better than the day I landed on it. And Sam, thank you for all that you do.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for everything that you're doing to bring people together and empower people
Yeah.
and to encourage people and give people hope.
Yes.
Okay. So
It's
with
an
that,
honor.
folks, you heard it straight. You heard it here. And like I said, the election is coming up, but this process that Sam and I are talking about of getting involved goes on forever, right?
Between,
Huh?
yeah, between elections. Yeah.
Yeah, and elections go on forever. So by definition, this process goes on forever. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so with that, Sam, thank you for joining me. This has been encouraging, and I'm gonna learn more about it through your website and signing up on your form. And folks, I love you. God bless you. God bless you. God bless this country. And God bless every one of us. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe. We're going to come back with you with a whole lot more. We'll see you next time. Bye.